All right. Thank you for the reminder. I usually have the setup so that it automatically goes on, and for some reason it didn't. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. Turn it on there. But the idea of the commandments is this: is like any commandments out there, they're pretty strong guidelines. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to this stuff, but the idea is if you see something that doesn't follow along these patterns, take a pause, maybe ask. Maybe it's something to kind of circle up and go, hey, is there something we ought to think about here? Okay. But in general, they apply, right? And there are 11 of them, so not 10. The other thing I'll point out is throughout the course of this, I may bring up examples in your Salesforce environment. I'm not picking on anybody. This is no bullying zone. I just need something to be able to show, so I'm going to show it. The one thing, I do have some screenshots as we go here too. The one thing I noticed as I was kind of testing them in your environment here is they are a little fuzzy. So I'll just ask for a little bit of patience. I'll do my best to describe them. And then during the question and answer stuff, if we need to go and take a look at something specifically, I can bring it up in the org and kind of show it to you. Okay. Any questions before we get rolling? All right. So I want to talk, this is my impression of me working with you for the last couple, let's say last year and a half, 2 years. When I started working with you guys in general, from a technology standpoint, what I saw was handoffs, right? A lot of discrete systems, some of them talking to each other, others not talking to each other, but the information was getting copied and moved from system to system, sometimes copied very well, sometimes copied very terribly, right? And you guys made a pretty conscious decision when we started working together, because you saw some writing on the wall coming around things like Launchpad and Compass, and that kind of stuff. To go, we got to make a change here. We got to bring the information all in one place so that everybody can get access to it and everybody can work together from one set of data, right? If I think about Salesforce and what Salesforce is, that's it. It's kind of the master source of data for you guys. The way I like, as I was thinking about just analogies here, okay? The old way was a handoff, okay? The new way was a huddle. And the huddle is really you guys huddling around and going, we have this information we're working with, we're sharing it, we're talking about it. We're actively engaged in making sure it's up to date. The key thing that I see kind of outside coming in around why that's important is the growth of your organization. Okay? Since I've been here, I think I've seen you guys grow by like 25 to 30%. You've added team members. I know I can speak for Kelly's team. You were almost a lone gun here. I think it was you and Jessica when I showed up here initially, and then you guys have grown quite a bit. You got folks in Beloit. I don't know if you've got other expansion plans out there, if you're going to grow a team, but ultimately, the more families that you can help, the more good you're doing in the community. Ultimately, that's got to mean, you need more coaches, you need more real estate agents, you need more project rehab people. In order to support growth and to scale, that's a big tech word we use a lot, is scale. To scale your organization, you got to have your data in one place for everybody to get to it. Okay. So if I kind of build on that a little bit, I came up with this idea of the axe housing embrace. Okay, and what I mean by that is think about where your customers were a year and a half, 2 years ago. They were in the middle of that handoff too. Okay, they might be working with a counselor, coach, they hand it off to a real estate agent. From a technology standpoint, the coach kind of went away. It may still be there, but it was hard to kind of share information on what the coach did and what the real estate agent was doing. Ben's team gets involved as a project. Where's that real estate opportunity? Where's the information for it? What were they doing from a coaching standpoint? Where they come from? It's all in a whole bunch of different places. What you guys have now done is kind of going around with your customer and going, hey, we got you. And behind the scenes, you're holding hands. Okay, so the customer is in the middle, and you guys are just supporting it. You're kind of rotating. I like the term rotation. Okay, a 360-degree rotation around your customer. That is very significant. There are not a lot of organizations that you guys really have it. Okay, you're building towards it. If we think about just like what were some of the systems where you guys were when I started working with you, you're using Launchpad, you're using Insightly, you're using Dropbox, maybe you're using Google Drive too. You're using eTapestry, using DocuSign, you're using MailChimp, and all of them had separate pieces of information. Right? Some of it may have come from one to another, but it was getting pushed around. Right? Where you are today is you have Salesforce, which has Compass in it. It replaced Launchpad. And I made a note to myself here that along the way, we're going to say the words "Thank you, Compass" a number of times during this presentation. Okay. And I'll say that most of the time be tongue in cheek, but I'll explain why. Okay. You're also doing all the marketing and development work that you used to be doing outside of Salesforce in Salesforce now. In addition to that, you're doing all the real estate opportunities and rehab projects inside of Salesforce that you were not doing inside of Salesforce prior to this. Okay, one set of data, all in one place. You got a couple other things that are out there. You've replaced Dropbox I think with Google Drive. You're using that exclusively at this point. We still have DocuSign and MailChimp out there, but we have some plans that I'll share with you in the future or later in the presentation around possible integrations with that stuff or possible replacements. Okay.
We also had a separate tools database for the scopes of work.
I forgot about that one. I don't know if I forgot about it or blacked it out. But thank you. The key difference there is the data, the master data for that is all in one place. Right? That's very significant. So single system used by all. This is my mantra. Okay. Remember, I don't work for Salesforce, but this is really important. This is a function of the fact that this is the way you do business. It's not something extra that you do. It's not Salesforce. It doesn't exist.
Let's say that together. It's not Salesforce. It doesn't exist.
That's pretty awesome. Right. You have to walk in and say that every morning. Yeah. One other thing I'll just share with you. I'm an engineer by trade. I'm a classically trained industrial engineer. So when I got out of school, I would work for more time watching people work. And as an engineer, everything is a bulleted list to me. Okay. So over the last couple of days, I told my wife, I'm like, I gotta just pop a couple beers and go put some graphics into this presentation because otherwise I'm gonna bore everyone to death. So I'm gonna apologize right now if my graphics are kind of wonky, but I do this. The key thing around this, like I've been saying, is single source of information, the master. Another good way to define it is the source of truth. It's the master that's going to feed all the other things that you guys are using. Not saying there aren't some other tools you're going to use in the future, but Salesforce, the Salesforce database is your master of information. It feeds everything else. Continue with the mantra every day. Right. This is I think this is the one bulleted list that you're going to see. And this is just because I don't know how to put graphics to this stuff. If I think about kind of your world and you guys as a group together, there are a couple of key common things that you all got to be kind of aligned on around what they are and how they're used in Salesforce. I'm going to call them a shared object in Salesforce, or a shared piece of data. There are three. Okay? The first is something called organizations. Okay, there are two kinds of organizations. I have households and I have organizations. Thank you, Compass number 2. Okay. And we'll talk about kind of what they really are, but at a high level, organizations are groups of people. Right? And in particular, you folks working in Compass, the idea of a household, pretty significant because you have a contact in a household, the contact is kind of primarily who you're working with, other family members. In Salesforce, every person in the environment has a household related to them. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But this idea of organizations, key object number 1. Probably the most significant one to all of you guys is number 2, which is contacts, people. Right? And there are a number of different kinds that you guys can pick from as you're kind of getting in there and creating things, or just how they're defined. Compass brings along customers, prospects, co-applicants, and others for the ride. Right, so as a result of us using the Compass program, those are predefined and they just need to be embraced by everybody. Okay. The other one that's on there is development. This is a special one that we included for you guys specifically because there are just some people who just the development organization works with, and they kind of don't fit anything else. You gave them their own kind of type because there's certain things that want to be able to do with them. You will notice I got leads crossed out here. Right? Compass has this idea of leads too. You don't use them. Right? So if you ever have the urge to touch something that says lead on it, back away. Okay? And the reason for that is this. Compass assumes that your new customers are going to find you on the web, and the first time they're going to engage with you is through their portal product, through Salesforce. There's a whole piece of Compass where people can kind of do their own thing. Their assumption is that's how you're going to get introduced to your customers. That's not how you guys do it. You guys have a very specific way when people go to your website, fill out a form, and they start walking through, and you vet them before you even start kind of working with it. And they can go through the 4 videos and submit a credit report or a credit report payment or a bank approval first. That's not a part of the Compass model. So we've kind of pushed that Compass thing to the side to get out of the way. Right? But people, contacts, most important object for you guys, because it's shared amongst all. Right? Third thing, and this is going to be probably something where people go, I haven't heard this one a whole lot. Some people have, some people haven't. It's this idea of affiliations. Okay? Affiliations is a person has a relationship to an organization. In your world, person is related to multiple organizations. Right? I can work for Better Partners. I can be on the board for my son's hockey team, WNS. I can be coach for MSOE hockey team. We've got a hockey team going here. But Salesforce lets you model all those things, all those relationships. And for you guys, that's very important. While you're working with families, their affiliations probably aren't that important. But all the other support organizations that are involved in what you do, very, very significant for your organization itself, because Kelly's team in particular is using that information to do things like tell people stories about how you're helping families in the community. Use quantifying that information to go after other donor sources to go, hey, can you help us out? Look at all the stuff we've done in this neighborhood. You're a big player in this neighborhood. If we could get a little bit of help from you, we could double what we're doing. She and her team can use all that information to tell the story about what you guys are doing. And it's very, very significant for us to go in and say, put the right people in there to be able to target that story stuff. Right? So in particular, when we're creating information like contacts that maybe aren't that are not a part of the day-to-day kind of coaching business, you know, the realtors, the loan officers, that kind of stuff, it's real important to identify what's their affiliation out there. And what realty company are they affiliated with, that kind of stuff. Right? We'll talk a little bit more about that too. All right. If you get nothing else out of this, the mantra: accounts, contacts, affiliations. Okay. That's
the mantra again.
If it's not Salesforce, it doesn't exist.
Guys good. I've never ever had a group do that. Yep. Okay, so it's time for the commandments. Brace yourself. I promise well, I don't promise. I can't promise I won't get louder as I say them, but I'll do the best I can. All right, commandment number 1. I said there are 11 of them. Come on.
One more than that.
That's right. Salesforce is special too. The first one is search before you create. Always, always, always search before you create something new. Whether it's a contact, whether it's an organization, whether it's a donation, whether it's a real estate opportunity, anything. Okay. Salesforce has a very rich global search function. Basically, any field, I'll say 99% of the fields on any record are searchable. Right. So if you do a text search at the top, if it's in there, likely you will find it. Okay. You can get very, very detailed and filtered around what your results look like if you want, but take a whack at it. It supports wildcards, so like an asterisk for from this point forward, that kind of stuff. Search first. Okay. The key to all this is we're trying to prevent duplicate data in the system. Okay. Salesforce does have some means to bubble up duplicates, but it's not the most robust. So if we can be proactive about it ahead of time, the better off we are. There in just around deduping, I'm actively doing some work in your environment to dedupe things and try and get it into a state and get a process in place. So as duplicates come up, because they will come up, we can reconcile them. But one of the keys I've found for you guys too is you got to look at more than the name. Okay? There are a lot of folks that you're working with that have either the same or very similar names. But look at a little more detail than that. Look at their address. Look at their email address in particular. Email address is a really good indicator. And a phone number, it can help too, just as far as is it really the same person or not, or something different.
So what's the big problem? So let's say there's two same people, two separate records. Like, why is that problematic?
It's a good question. Because the other things that you're doing in Salesforce is you're relating stuff to that account, that record. So in particular, we're taking contact, you might have bookings and notes that are getting related to it. You may have activity that you're sharing from email, conversations, correspondence back and forth that you're sharing to it. You might have real estate opportunities that are involved, and you might have rehab projects that are involved in. If you have two separate records for that, then that information is spread across the different places, and other people looking at it, they may not see the whole picture. Okay. And in particular, like if you're starting with somebody and you're working on them here, the way that your system works is that information is visible to everybody. So it's like I remember the rotation, that information stays in the middle. We just rotate around it, right? And I can reach over to if I'm the real estate agent that I'm working with this guy, I can actually kind of reach over if you think about it and go, let me talk to the coach. Coach put this information in. It's right here. You can kind of talk about it. One thing I'll show you at the very end of this too is something where you can actually have a conversation in Salesforce about what you're looking at. So I need a chat. Okay.
Really important.
Yeah.
So when you're using that top search bar, hit enter. It's going to come up with a list that guesses what you're looking for. That's not a complete list. So hit enter and it'll give you everything that comes up.
Because if you don't hit enter, you'll just see like the first 3 or 4 or something.
Oh, thank you for bringing up that. The Salesforce. Thank you, Salesforce. Yeah, this is one zinger for Salesforce. Salesforce likes to try and guess at what it thinks you want. Right? And it does that every place that you're going to try and search for things. So when you type something in, it may go and grab the first couple that look like it's a match, or even what it'll do sometimes even more is it will present to you the last few things that you worked on, thinking they're a match. Okay. So in all those cases, like when you like the type ahead function, it's not a complete type ahead where it's going to give you exactly what a match is. Salesforce it has this common thought where it goes, hey, you know what, if you've worked on that, if that's like one of the last 10 things that you've worked on since you've been working at Salesforce, pretty good chance you're going to want to touch it again. Let me put that in front of you. Right. So to Kelly's point, in all those search places, both in the search here, and also when you're doing something like if you're on a contact and you're looking up, I don't know, like a household or account for it, and it starts presenting you with things, it's presenting you with what it thinks you want based on what you worked on. In all those cases, there's a magnifying glass that you can click on that brings up the whole search, right? Unless you absolutely know that that's the one that you want that comes up there, take it for a ride and take the whole search for it, okay? Thank you for reading that. Everybody get this? All right. Number 2 and number 3. First is my Depeche Mode commandment. People are contacts, people are people. I knew a couple people would get that. Number 2, people are contacts. There are no exceptions to that. Every person that you interact with in your world is modeled as a contact in Salesforce. It's not a lead. It's not something else. It is a contact. No exceptions. Okay. The second thing is, or item number 3 here is, if you don't have a way to contact a contact, you ain't got a contact. Okay. Right. The best case is you got an email address. Kind of good enough is you got a phone number. Absolute perfect case would be email address, phone number, mailing address. Okay. But if you haven't got a way to interact with that person you're about to put into the system, don't put them in. Do the extra work and find out. Okay. And there may be extra work there. your organization is saying it's worth it.
Yes, there is extra work there. Don't be lazy. Do the extra work. Like, this drives me absolutely crazy. I think that we're really quick to say, okay, here's this new loan officer I'm working in, and put in the loan officer's name, and then we go back to work. How is that helpful at all? I need an email address. I need a phone number. If at all possible, an address, a specific branch that they work at. And you have this information because it's usually at the end of the email that they sent you.
And you can create all of these in your Cirrus Insight sidebar on your Gmail, so you don't even have to go back to Salesforce. You can put all those things in there, and like, I'm passionately piggybacking on Dee, because if you want marketing to do a really great job in getting more lenders to refer to us, getting more partners engaged, if we don't have an email address or phone number, there's no way to do that. So we're pulling that data all the time. And it just, that was my commandment of, don't put it in if you want more content, a way to contact them. In all caps.
I'm gonna give you the embrace to say, this is important to your organization. With a smile on my face, okay? Because it is, and the fact that you guys are all in one, remember, all your data is all in one place. You, by having complete data, you're gonna support each other, right? It does take a little bit of extra work. Work is worth it. It is, and especially if you can do it up as early in when you're interacting with someone as possible. It's worth every second that you spend on that, right? One of my nitpicky things is placeholders, and I'm going to tell you my Joe Mama story. Right? I had a customer who put placeholder email addresses for all their contacts, but they didn't know who the email address was because they said, "Hey, we need to have an email address. It's the way they did business. They had to have an email address. They were enforcing it in Salesforce." I said, "Well, we don't know yet. We'll put Joe at joemama.com as for every single contact." That they didn't know the email address. They thought, placeholder, they'll be able to run a report, find the ones that don't, they can omit it from this. That's great. What the people did that didn't know is that information was syncing to their digital marketing system. Right? And that information, when it's synced, the digital marketing system was picking up on email address as a unique identifier for every single contact that came into the system. So it said, oh, I've got all these contacts that have joe at joemama.com. as their email address, update every single contact in their Salesforce environment to reflect that with all the other information about that person, like their address, like their first name and last name. So suddenly 2,500 contacts in their environment were Joe at joemama.com. What they also didn't realize is that same data was being synced to one of their customers. So we got a call. The customer happens to be one of my customers too. I got a call from a woman named Janelle at this company in Southern California who was chuckling as she was calling. Like, she realized the gravity of this, but she couldn't help but laugh. She says, "Hey, what's going on at our buddies in Texas? We just got 2,500 contacts for Joe at joemama.com. Did a chain open up down there?" Oh, face plant. Needless to say, I don't like placeholders. Right? If you use good data, if you don't know the data, try and find out. Usually, it's the data is available. Right? Okay. Number 4, contacts are directly related to households. In Salesforce, like I said before, you have 2 kinds of organizations. Okay? Organizations are groups of people. Independent of Compass, the other word for an organization is account in Salesforce. If you ever worked with Salesforce before, it's like you have accounts, groups of people. Thank you, Compass. They rename them organizations. Don't know why, that's okay. But there are 2 kinds. One is household, group of people living under the same roof. The other kind is an organization, which is all the other groups of people out there that you may interact with. In Salesforce, when you create a contact, well, let me back up for a second. Contacts are directly related to households always. What that means is every contact in the system that's created, regardless of who creates it, needs to have a household associated with it. Okay? Doesn't matter if they work for a bank, doesn't matter if they work for the city, doesn't matter if they're a state representative, they have a household, they live somewhere. We don't necessarily know all the details about that household, and that's okay. In particular, in Compass, the contact for what Compass reports is probably more important than the household. But the model in Salesforce in your world is that every person that you're interacting with, including me, I'm in your Salesforce environment, you have my household. Right? I just want to make sure that idea is kind of crystal clear with everybody. When we create people, and I'm going to show you, I'll show you kind of the trick that happens when we do that. Every contact will be directly related to a household. And what that means to all of you is when you're looking at a contact record, the field there says organization name. It should always have the word household in it. It should always have the last name of the person that you're working with, and it may have the first name up there too. Right? But it should always have the word household in it. Organization name, household. Say that again.
Organization and household.
Yes.
I just want to ask a question and or make a comment.
Yep.
because I've been playing around with this. So just because you don't have the household address does not mean that you should not create a household. That's correct, right?
That is correct.
And if you don't have a household address, where in my case, a lot of my contacts that I'm creating are for lenders, I don't have a household address, so their primary affiliation is going to give me their work address, but I'm not putting the work address in there, correct?
That's a good assumption. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That makes sense. Yep.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
So when you're in the organization, I know that you might have one organization that has 5 people from maybe committee member, fundraiser committee, whatever. Why can we not, or can we put in under the organization notes? So even though I may talk to Brenda today, I might talk to Susan later. And instead of having to go to Brenda and Susan's household to see the notes from, what was it, Sarah's? Well, the email.
Yep.
Why are we able to see just straight up notes from the organization?
Yes, if you associate the email to the organization in addition to the individuals.
Good question. Okay. So if you made me think something. So email. I'm going to go off script here for a second. If you're talking about an email conversation and sharing an email, saving it as activity history in Salesforce, Salesforce will allow you to save email to up to 50 contacts simultaneously. And one other thing, this is a technical constraint in Salesforce. So you can say, hey, I've got these 5 people that this email is related to. You can save it to all 5 of them at the same time, and it'll show up in activity history for all of them. But in order to get it on the account, you got to say the other thing I'm going to save it to is the account. And it used to be a long time ago, there used to be an automatic roll-up that would happen. Salesforce did some stuff with their UI, and they blew away that automatic roll-up to go, we're going to assume you want to put it on the account because you have this multi-layered relationship now between contacts who can relate to more than one account. But you can define, when you do that, you can say, and let me relate this to the account, so it will show up on the account. The caveat there is you got to pick one thing. Like it can't be, I have three realty companies I want to relate it to, but you can't do that all at once. You could go in and do this. You could say, I have this email, I'm going to relate it to the 5 people in the one account. Then I'm going to relate it again to the next account. And then I'm going to relate it again to the next account. You kind of do it 3 times and it'll work that way. Okay. Little kind of wonky, but the best is. You mentioned something else about notes. If you're talking about the actual notes thing in Salesforce, I usually tell people, stay away. The reason for that is the notes thing in Salesforce is kind of the digital equivalent of a Post-it note. Okay, you can relate it to a lot of stuff, but you can't report on it very well. So it's kind of cool if you just go and look at it and go, hey, I just want to see some stuff that someone jotted down. But if you want to create a report based on notes that have been collected over time, near impossible to do. The better thing to do around that is to create a completed task. You put your notes in the completed task for that thing, and then you can write a report on it. Okay.
On the contact address should be pulling through an account address as well, right? I know sometimes if we're manually inputting their address via Google, and then on the household side, it's missing the zip code or getting flagged.
It's a good question. I'll actually, I'm gonna talk a little bit about addresses in a little bit. I'm gonna hedge that one, and if I still haven't answered by the time we get to addresses, double back and slap me around for it, okay?
There's another question.
I saw you had a chat with your honorable friends have a question.
Oh, rats.
That is, Bobby, and she is, she responded to the first commandment of search before you create, and her comment was, yes, please.
Excellent. All right. The last thing I'll point out here is we do have a naming convention for households, and it's actually automatically assigned by Salesforce. It's the last name of the contact that you're working with, and then in parentheses, their first name, and then the word household. And the significance of this is Salesforce actually keeps track of when you add people to a household, when you add contacts to a household account, and we'll take that into consideration with the naming convention for the household. So you notice, and we may do one of these here in a minute, is if you add a person to a household, it'll take both their first names and put them in parentheses, this and that. Or if they have different last names too, it'll go this parentheses and the next one. It's doing that automatically for you, okay? So you don't have to remember it. You will occasionally, and I bumped into this last night as I was taking a little bit of data for this, you will see sometimes some households that don't conform to that naming convention. Inevitably, I'm going to call those were legacy records that got brought into the system before perhaps that was turned on or brought in and that name was forced. It's very easy to go in and kind of check a box on one page to go automatically name this, and then the next time you make a change, it'll name it. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about context?
Can I make a comment
Yep.
about creating households, though?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay, then I will reserve my comment.
Yeah.
One more comment.
I have a question. So when I'm in the real estate opportunity and I see the contact with the phone number and like a drop down list, and I click there, but it doesn't show me any phone number. So I have to go and get out of there, go into the contact or find it somewhere else. Is there a reason why sometimes it does show me the phone number on that drop down list and sometimes it doesn't?
Are you talking about when
She's talking about the box that pops up when you're hovering over the hyperlink
Oh.
for the name. And yes, that pulls the first phone number that's listed. So most people are using a mobile number and we're entering that third number, which is the mobile. So I think that hyperlink is connected to, it's looking for that first field. That would be a hard line, which a lot of times we're not using.
Could we put that like a mobile number to nobody?
It actually matters, especially as we are looking at things like text messaging and having the ability to send text. So it's really important, again, going back to the data, that if it's a hard line, we're putting it in that first line. If it's an office number for a contact, you're putting it in that first line. And when it's asking, is this a mobile? That's where you're putting the mobile number.
So, and you can't change that order. I'm just curious.
That's more of a development.
I can take a look. I do have some control over what gets displayed when you mouse over, like a link to things. Let me double back and look at the phone numbers too. And the reason I say that is Compass has some phone number fields that they put in there, and the Nonprofit Success Pack has some phone number fields that they put in there. And they may be, I'm not going to say they're colliding and clashing a little bit. There may be a little bit of redundancy there that Compass hasn't taken into consideration, where we may want to go, hey, they've created a number for such and such, and there's actually really another place for it that maybe other people are using. Maybe do some automation to kind of keep it to each other. Jessica?
I think the problem is you're not choosing what their primary
Right.
mode of communication. So if you put in nothing in their work spot, and put in a mobile number, and you say their primary, their preferred is work, it's going to show in that spot.
Which is the default in the system, I think, right? I think the default in the system is that work is the primary.
So if
Could
you're
be.
not changing that, it's not. going to show.
Yeah, and this is the wonkiness I'm talking about, because I'm not sure you guys are seeing this. Like that, like you guys are dealing with the nonprofit success pack stuff, when that's with that. You guys may be seeing, hey, there's some other, these Compass has done something else with phone numbers. I just noticed this the other day. And like, okay, that may be wonky. Let me take that on outside this call. And
That is true, because they
Yeah.
can't pick up the preferred phone.
Yeah, you just have like 3 phone numbers, but you don't get to say which one's preferred.
Three options.
Thank you, Compass.
Yeah, thank you, Compass, number 3.
Right, the coaches can't designate.
I got you.
We can't, we just have three options.
Okay. All right, well, I'll make a point to kind of get some resolution around that, and we can clear that up pretty easily.
That's why we have conversations like that.
That's right.
This is also a place to go back to search first, because I think across the board, we would be putting in spouses, maybe after that first contact. And if you don't connect it to that household right away before you save it, it creates a second household, and then they're disconnected again.
Yeah.
So like search.
All right, number 5. Households are automatically created when you create a contact. Voila, you don't have to create it. Right? Salesforce does it automatically for you. And all you need to do is leave the organization name blank on a new contact. Okay? Salesforce will automatically create a household and name it correctly for you based on the contact that you put in it. Right? So when do you manually create a household? You never do. Right? Absolutely never. There's never a reason that you need to create a household manually. Right? All right. As far as contacts go, would there be any benefit in me kind of showing you quickly how to, like, with this couple scenarios I see for you guys is create a contact and where the right place to go and do that is? Okay. All right, so I'm going to do 3 of them. And I probably won't take this all the way through, but I'm going to take you to where you want to go, and I'll explain kind of why you want to do this. So we'll do a new contact for a brand new household. So like, just starting from scratch, where to go. If you have an existing contact, the best place to go to create a new contact for that household, an existing household, a new contact for it. And then what do you do if you got a contact, you need to move it to a new household? Okay, so with that, I'm going to bug out of this for a second. Hopefully technology will play nice with me. Okay, so scenario number 1, I got a brand new contact I'm going to deal with, and I need to enter it into Salesforce. 2 ways you can do it. I'm going to show you, I'll show you both of them.
You
Yeah.
need to reshare because they're still seeing your.
Oh, so this, oh, that's okay.
Wave to yourselves. That would be the magic camera drop for TV.
Yeah. All right, let me see if this will work. How's that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now I see it.
Okay. New contact, new household. Go to one place. Go to the contacts tab. Okay. Go to the new button on the contacts tab. I know. Oh, thank you. See, you're learning. You're learning. Yeah. Well done. The kinds of contacts that you're going to create, depending upon what kind of what you're doing in the organization, you're going to pick one of these. I'll pick another just because it's top of my list there. Okay. Yep.
Can you go back to that slide? You said something earlier about leads, just we don't deal with that.
Yep.
Why is it on there?
Because it's part of Compass.
Thank you, Compass.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would love to take it off there. I probably could, but I'm not exactly sure what will happen if I do. So I got to do a little more work behind the scenes to figure that out. Okay. Yeah. Actually, I'll do a customer because I know a lot of you guys do this. Okay, so I picked the customer I'm going to create. I enter their first name, last name, email address, whatever it is I have. The key to this is I leave their organization name blank. If I leave that blank, Salesforce will automatically create a household for them. Right? Any kind of new customer, any kind of new contact that you create, regardless of what type it is, I suggest you do it this way. Okay,
When you say do it this way, instead of doing it through Cirrus,
in sales, you can do it in Cirrus. As long as you leave the organization name blank, it should do the same thing, yes.
Okay.
I think, I'm trying to remember Cirrus, I think Cirrus asks you what kind of contact that you want to create. So yeah, should work the same way.
Sometimes it tries to auto-populate the household based on the information that it thinks you want to put in there. If it populates the organization name, just delete it. Just click in and delete the data that's in there, so it'll automatically create the house.
Right. The key is organization name is blank, and it'll create the household behind the scenes for you. If you have an existing household, see if I got my, so here's my household. If I need to add a contact to this household, the best way to do it is right here and click the new button. Okay, and the reason for that is, one, Salesforce will figure out that it needs to be in this household. And the second thing is it'll sometimes carry information down from the household to the contact. So if you got an address on the household, it should auto-populate the contact. Okay,
Another question.
sure.
So if I held off and put just the realtor's name in there, now I have all the information. Is this where I go to click new contact and put this information, see the her information in there?
Is the contact in this household?
Yeah.
Then it is, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And then same thing, if we were doing a realtor is going to be another type, you know, first name, last name. Again, you can see it pre-populates.
I want to clarify here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said, do you do it with a contact record? When you're adding a real estate agent. The real estate agent would be a new contact. I don't want them on the contact record for Torrey.
Oh,
The household. Or the.
So you're just, it's mostly like joint, right? You do like a
Right,
wife.
what we're talking
Oh,
about
I
in
see.
this scenario is like a husband, wife,
Yes.
that type of thing. You're talking about somebody associated with that contact because
Right.
they're their realtor. That is a totally separate contact. And I know that that's what you're talking about because I've seen this on your record.
Okay, these are people that live together.
Households are people that live in the same house or apartment or yurt or hut or. They live together in a unit. That is the only people that belong in a household.
We don't live at X house.
Right.
We don't live at BMO Harris Bank.
So you would be creating a totally new contact that is other, if you're talking about in the context of our work, a real estate agent that's working with a specific.
Yes.
So wouldn't they be, aren't there a household or the organization? I mean, wouldn't they be associated with their, wouldn't you go to that record?
Remember,
It would be easier. not
Time
to-
remember I said there are three things that are super important everybody gets. What was the first one? The second one. Organizations is the third one. Did we talk about affiliations yet?
No.
We'll get there. All right. Okay, what we're driving towards is, you're right, that there's some confusion here because you go, hey, I got a contact. Is it related to this family? Is it related to this real estate office? Where do I put it? Right? In your world, for the model here, any person, their primary direct relationship is to their household. Independent of how you interact with them, it's to their household. Those other things that they're related to, in particular, other organizations, we use affiliations to define that. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. In addition to that, you've also got some people that are involved in the things that you're working on. Okay, so if you got a real estate agent who's involved with a family on a real estate opportunity, it's actually a very specific place on a real estate opportunity to find who that is. Right? Like there's a place for the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, that kind of stuff. For those specific issues, that's how you bind those things together.
It's on the service record too.
Mhm. Yep. So there may be some kind of clear things along the way for the, I'm going to call it the artifact that's kind of in the middle that you're all gathering around. You have a service that you're providing. So there's some things that you're working on. Well, there's a reference to the real estate agent there. Real estate opportunity is a great example too. There's a couple of different references to real estate agents on that kind of stuff too. sort of.
But-
I'll keep going. Go ahead.
So I've been creating everyone as a development contact, so
Yep.
maybe a career contact.
Depends. If there are things that are just targets for you guys, that's why we left development in there. If there's stuff where other people, like a real estate agent, okay? You guys may be targeting them, but they're gonna interact with everybody else. I mean, you guys definitely have some people who nobody else is gonna work with. You got foundations, and things like that out there. People and then probably others. The nice thing about all this is you can change it too. Just because I'm an other today, I may become a customer next week. Okay, you can change your contact. That also leads me to one other thing, was what if I have an exception and it comes to both? Okay, you got a couple unicorns out there. Usually what we do is we go, the guideline is pick the one that's most applicable. And if you can't decide, ask about it. Okay, and the reason for that is this: are there technically ways we could probably deal with it? Yeah, they're very expensive. And it may not make sense to deal with it if it's a onesie twosie kind of thing. It may just make more sense to go bite the bullet, make a decision for this one person that's going to happen once every 3 years kind of thing versus 1,000 people.
A good example of that would be a loan officer who becomes a customer.
Mhm.
So they might be in the system as a loan officer. They have their contact record, they have their household, they're affiliated to BMO Harris Bank as a lender that you work with, that works with other families. But they're like, this is a really cool program and I qualify for it, so I want to be an Axe customer. So now they become a customer contact, and that needs to be identified and shifted from where they were to who they are now. And their affiliation to BMO Bank still stays there, but now we get all the customer information into the record as well.
We have this problem right now that Raina Johnson came through as a coaching person, and now they're a development person, so there are 2 contracts for them. And so should it be one or should it say it's 2 separate?
My argument would be it should be one, and it should be whatever is current, because there's likely other ways to figure out the fact that she was a customer.
There's some exception to this
Yeah.
one because we've talked about it 100 times.
Yeah.
Well, because I feel like if we change them to development, then we're gonna lose their real estate operation.
That's a great idea that I'm gonna build on here. The idea that you have information all in one system, this is the power behind it. And especially when we think about contact types, what we're really talking about is filters. Okay? In Salesforce, a contact is a contact is a contact. Every single field related to every kind of contact is associated with every single contact. But when we use something like types, like customer, co-applicant, prospect, other, what we're really doing is we're saying, let's put a filter on top of that, because we just need to see and use and interact with the pieces of information that are pertinent to that kind of customer. If they change over time, we don't lose any of the data that they had over in those other fields. It's still there. And their references to stuff they work on doesn't vanish. Right? All that happens is the lens changes. The things that were important about in this case, Rita Johnson, is that what her name? She was a customer at one point in time. Maybe that was a year ago. Well, that was important a year ago. Right now, she's gone on, she's bought a house. Now she's a development development target, because she's interested in giving back. Well, that information may be more pertinent and important to us now. We can still report on the other stuff. It's still out there. We just may need to think about, when we're building those reports, okay, we've got a couple of these unicorns that now they're development contacts. So we got to make sure we have a way to include them in the report. But the information, you don't lose the information.
I don't know why we keep 2 unicorns, which is totally in the weeds, but we want to keep on that primary contact who's a home buyer with us, their original address.
Okay.
And then on the real estate record is going to be where they purchased, so that we can then do that calculation and mapping of like who's not farming, which state in the neighborhood or not.
Mhm.
When we keep only one record, we would want to have the updated mailing address on that record for development. So that caused a thing with, I think there were a couple of these that
Okay.
we kind of need to move around. So like, I guess more of the story, if we find that, just ask, let's talk about it.
Yeah. But one of the things I see with a lot of our customers is when they're using Salesforce is the exceptions bubble up. Okay. Because prior to using a tool like this, you're likely doing things in spreadsheets, email, that kind of jazz. You can do whatever you want. If you got an exception, you just make a little asterisk and note kind of go on with it. Ain't no asterisks in Salesforce. It's and that's not a bad thing, because unfortunately, a lot of these exception processes, most of the organization didn't know about. Okay, so by kind of going, hey, I got this situation that, how do we deal with this? You bubble it up so that the organization can make a decision how you can deal with it. Right? It may make sense to go in and go, hey, you know what? We need to archive everyone's email or everyone's mailing address when we create them as a customer, because we know they're going to change over time. That may make a whole lot of sense. And we may have one situation here where we know about it, but it could happen again in the future. So that it may make sense. Or you may go, we've been doing this 10 years. This only happened once. Make a note in your contact record, point towards the other one so that people know that, and then move on. You don't have to think about it again. But it's important to have a discussion.
So my question's for Kelly, that kind of rule, is it like archiving the address and whatever, is that written somewhere, or is that in the contact?
I just made that up.
You were just asking about that.
I just made a note to talk about
Yeah.
at our meeting.
That was me coming up with that after 30 seconds.
Okay. But it does, sure, okay, heard
Yeah,
that one's not real, but it
Yeah,
does
welcome
sound
to my
like
crazy
you're-
mind.
It does sound like Kelly's rule about the keeping addresses, don't delete them, that's real, and that's not written somewhere.
I would articulate it this way. What you said is, hey, there's a business need that says it's important for us to know where people started from when they started working with us, and where did they transition to if they transitioned to a new address somewhere. And it's a reasonable expectation that people are going to do that.
I think
The challenge that you guys are having is you're also using the address on contact records as I'm going to mail them something. So you have a conflict here that says if they move to a new address and I update the old address, I lose the context of where they started from because I want to mail them stuff. So does it make business sense for us to kind of come up with a way to retain what that original address was somewhere else? Like as you were talking about it, that was where my mind went. Going, okay, let me take a look at that outside
So
of
this is
this.
a work in progress.
It's an idea that will likely become a work in progress. Go ahead, Jessica.
I think Jamie's asking because, like, what happens as a development person if that person really shouldn't keep their.
No, and we can talk about that.
Excellent questions. Okay, so we were talking about new contacts, existing household. You can see it pre-populates the household. Okay, so it's going to put this person in that household. And then the last situation was, what do I do if I got a person I need to move them to a new household who's already in Salesforce? All you need to do is change the reference to the organization. You see a manage household button up on the top. I actually took a look at this outside this meeting to make sure this worked correctly. If you just change the organization name to another household that is in Salesforce, it will take that into consideration. That puts it in there. It will rename the household, that kind of stuff. So what I'm talking about, if I go to my contact record here, if I change this, okay, don't create a new one, search for an existing one. Right, that's the key. Does that make sense?
That's if you leave.
That's if if I was going to put myself in Vicky's household.
He's gonna come with it.
Yep, you're going to say change from the Nagle household to the Lipinski household, and the Lipinski household is already in Salesforce.
Oh, and it is.
Okay.
This is like the practical application as people get divorced, get separated, and there's, that stuff.
Actually, that's a really good. I'm gonna jump on. If this doesn't answer what I think you're gonna ask, jump back in. If someone gets divorced, okay, you need to split them into their own household, go into their contact record and blank that out, and then hit save, and it'll create its own household.
You have the power to divorce people and to marry people
Yes.
and to kill people with the deceased button and come back to life.
Yep.
Awesome.
Only in the database.
Yeah.
Very seriously.
Yeah.
But that is pretty common.
Yeah, can you repeat that again with the divorce? When you have
Yes.
two and they divorce?
If two people get divorced, and you need to separate them from their household, okay? Go into the contact, one of the two contact records, whichever one is the right one to, I don't know what the guidelines for that would be.
Whichever one moved out.
I guess. Okay. In their organization name field, just blank it out, and then hit save. And when you'll see, it'll create a new household for them using their first name in parentheses. If you go back to the old household, it should update to reflect the fact there's only one contact, or does not have that contact in their other contacts.
Well, isn't the big question then, should we just leave the contact in there if they're no longer involved, or should we just leave it?
Because we definitely have people who come into the system who maybe they started a couple years ago and it's them and their boyfriend, and they come back and they're like, yeah, love him. I'm trying to keep it moving. And now they're their own household. So we see that pretty frequently.
Sorry,
Yes.
questions. I do have a person whose wife just passed away. So you just press the deceased button. Do you have to make any other changes?
Oh, thanks.
No, Salesforce will trigger the household naming convention and the formal and informal greeting, so that if you pull for mailings, they're not included. The key to that is when you're running reports for mailing lists and email lists, one of your filters needs to be the deceased checkbox is false. If you do not tell Salesforce to exclude dead people, you will mail to dead people, and that makes them, their surviving spouses and family angry.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're about halfway through the commandments. How's everyone doing? Hanging in there? All right. I'm watching the clock too. We're a little after 10 o'clock. Is everybody doing okay? Okay. All right. I think the next few will go pretty quickly, but please keep asking the questions. These are really good questions. And the most important thing is everyone else is hearing them. So I'm sure the questions you're asking, someone else is probably kind of scratching their head on how do we do that? Okay, the next one. Any group of people that is not a household, family is an organization. There are no exceptions to this rule. Okay. Banks, realty organizations, government agencies, municipal agencies, construction companies, painters, they all have a business, some sort of business entity to them. That's an organization in Salesforce. They could be businesses, they could be nonprofits, they could be clubs. The types that you see up here are all the types of organizations that Axe Housing defines for these kinds of groups of people. Okay, everything in white is a standard value from Compass. Everything in yellow is something special that was created for you guys for your request. Right, but in general, if it's not that, like it's got to be one of those choices, and if it's not one of those choices, set it as other. And the importance to that is this, is one of the things that we ought to be doing, and we should be doing here, I would say fairly soon, is we go look at what all the others are and go, hey, do we need another type? Has the business changed? Okay. I had this happen with a whole bunch of my customers in the food service industry. Right? They have a very standard list of the kinds of companies that they work with, market segments that they work with. Cannabis became one of them. Because it suddenly became pretty important in the food service industry. Okay, so they in fact update all their cannabis. Okay, but this is super important because this is how you categorize, in particular, the organizations that people are working for, and we actually pull that down to contact records and use that for things like reports and filters and that kind of stuff. Okay. Affiliations. Okay, this is the new piece for some of you guys. The idea of affiliations is that a contact can be affiliated with one or more organization out there. This is how you define what relationship, what kind of interaction a person has with organizations other than their household. Where do they work? Where are they board member for? where they spend a lot of their time? Where do they have influence that is important to Axe? Right? The key thing around that is the words important to Axe housing. Right? I got this little blurb on the side is just some examples of things that you might define an affiliation. Okay. I think this is right. I had a question one time. Can I have more than one affiliation to the same organization? The answer is yes. Okay. Think about it. Your role can change over time. I may have been an executive with an organization with Better Partners at one point. Now I'm a trustee. If both those things are important to you guys, you can keep track of the fact that at one time I was this and I transitioned to this other thing. Those are both affiliations with Salesforce. Okay.
So talking about affiliations to organizations. Talk about affiliations to people. Is that?
Doesn't exist.
That's a relationship.
It's a good question. Salesforce allows you to define the way people are related to each other. Like I'm somebody's father, I'm somebody's son, I'm somebody who referred somebody else. Technically in Salesforce, that's the idea of relationships. And it's actually a separate technical kind of connection between contacts and contacts. What we're talking about here is a connection between contacts and organizations. Okay, it's a good question. All right. Okay, in your world, in your Salesforce environment, you have specific roles that have been defined on your affiliation records. And what this means is specific to Axe Housing, you recognize that people that have a role in an organization is significant. And these are the roles that Axe Housing has said are significant to keep track of. Right? And the reason for that is you may target them with certain communications around what their role is. The one thing I want to point out about this is none of those are titles. Okay? You have no control over what title people have. So you can't use it as a report filter. Okay? I have a customer who tried and tried and tried to model healthcare agencies across the United States by people's title. I have another customer who unfortunately needs to get the food service directors in school systems across Texas and Oklahoma. They can't use title for it because people's title can be different school system to school system. Right? The importance of this is you are assigning this to your affiliation records between contacts and organizations. You are deciding what their role is, and there's a field on there for role. Okay?
It's a drop down. Right?
It's a drop down. Okay, you can pick one thing. So if you go, hey, this person's got two roles, either one, what's the most significant one, or two, make two records for it. Okay, the ones that are in yellow, for anyone who's not on Kelly's team, these are really the two roles that you guys are going to identify for people. Okay, either they're a loan officer or they're a realtor. And it's not saying you're not dealing with people who aren't things other than this, but from a significance to the organization standpoint, those are the kind of the key people that you're going to be bumping into that the rest of the organization needs to know about. In particular, Kelly's team needs to know about. Right? Kelly's team will take care of the rest of them because most of those they're probably development contacts or other contacts, that kind of stuff. They have some ways of figuring that out. But the fact that there is a relation, an affiliation there is what's significant. Okay, so when you enter a realtor contact into the system, the first thing you do is you put them in as a contact, and the second thing you can do is say who they affiliated with. And the third thing you can do is say what, identify if they're a realtor on that affiliation. And I'll show you kind of what I mean. Go ahead.
So if I have BMO and one of their contacts, which is a decision maker, is now gone, the drop down can be like four.
Yes. Yes. There's a status field on the affiliation record.
Yep.
I can't remember what it is. Yeah, there's two values, current and former.
Super helpful to the guys, especially the pictures that have great relationships with loan officers, and then you move along. So what we're finding is we've got information from like 2 jobs ago in the system, because that's what pulled over when we did this. So if the loan officer emails you and says, hey, heads up, I'm changing firms, here's my new contact, like, so helpful to update, like, the contact and stuff is already in there. Just change their primary affiliation, their email address, and phone number, because when we go to, like, do the lender newsletter, which is restarting, if they don't have the role of loan officer, they're not gonna get that email. Or when Dee says, hey, all the loan officers and let's have them come in for a meeting, that's how they're gonna get on that list. It's not necessarily it's not on their contact record, it's that affiliation role.
Why don't we keep it on the record if they're former? So if Sandra was at BMO and now she's at Associated, why do we keep her as former? Because in her household, it's gonna have a record of where she's from, right?
It's a good question. One of the things you have the capability of doing in Salesforce is kind of building the history, like profile history of the people that you interact with. And affiliations is kind of it's really a history of those relationships to organizations. It may be current, it may be former. There may be a business reason why it's important to you guys to know, who used to work at a realty agency in the last 3 years. They may not be doing it now, but just who was it? Who's active and who used to be a realtor for whatever reason. It just gives you a window into that. Technically, could you go, hey, you know what? We're just going to keep track of current affiliations. Yeah, if that made sense for you guys as an organization to do, technically you could do that.
It also matters on the real estate record, like if we're reporting to lenders, how many deals they did, and if they look back in history, it'll still show up as that the lender they were with at that time. That did the deal versus going and then.
It also helps with replacement. So Sandy might be associated now, but you might be able to call up and say, do you know who replaced you at BMO?
It's really about you guys now have the ability to have more complete information about the world you're working in and share it amongst yourselves so everyone is on the same page.
And really for the coaching teams, we're more concerned about this right side of the screen. Because when we're creating those other contacts, their affiliation, that's when you're putting in that affiliation. The system's gonna create the org, and you're saying, oh yeah, this is, the real estate agent from Exit Real Estate Strategy. You're putting in that affiliation at that point. Other than that, it's just really important that we're thorough in our contact records. Because you can see, like, we have a lot of people who work for the city who are in our program. What great information for the marketing team to have if they're talking to a city official. Like the people who work here come to X. We've got 43 of you in our system right now who are current city workers. So it's about us being thorough on the contact record, and when we're creating those others, those people that are associated with that contact, we're putting in the primary information.
Yep. William Taylor, lender. I just put him in yesterday. I'm just trying to imagine. I don't remember where.
This guy? JP Morgan?
Yes.
Okay.
I just don't remember where affiliation is. Like, I know.
Sure.
I know you put in title.
Yep, that's a good question. So a couple things. One, if I look at his affiliation record, primary title related to, okay. So yeah, this is a challenge that I'm going to be taking care of outside of this call is the fact that, or at this meeting, where do you put this in on a contact, in particular for coaches, where do you put this in on a contact record? Because, thank you, Compass. Compass doesn't recognize what affiliations are. And what I mean by that is it's not part of their model. It's not something that they have thought through significantly for use by their customers. And the reason for that is on the customer records, the co-applicant records, the prospect records, and their lead records, it's not used. Okay, it's not a part of their model. Their functionality doesn't take into consideration. And their other record for contacts is kind of a catch-all. Okay, so like in your world, like this is another contact. Okay, they haven't thought through where these fields need to be. The field that you'd actually use to kind of put this information, if I remember correctly, is buried at the bottom somewhere. Yeah, you guys can't even see it, so it's not even here. Oh, I take that back. It's this one here where you have primary affiliation where it says JP Morgan Chase. If you put the account that they should be in that field, then Salesforce will automatically create an affiliation record for you. But what it won't do is it won't set the role for you. Okay, so even if you do that, you do need to go back into that affiliation record, which you can see right here is organization affiliations. I'm not sure why I didn't put, oh yeah, I did put JP Morgan Chase in there. And then update the role drop down to reflect what they are. Okay, it's a little bit of an extra step. At this point in time, I don't have a way around it. I'm sleeping on it. See if I can figure out something. My subconscious hopefully will come up with a way to get around that at some point in time, but I don't have a way around it right now. Okay, far away.
Does William Taylor work at JP Morgan Chase corporate or does he work at a branch?
I'll get to that. That's a really good question. Okay. This is something very specific to you guys so that you understand a little more kind of, I'll call it naming and relationship convention in Salesforce. You will find some organization records in Salesforce that have the word parent in parentheses. Okay. You may also find some records in Salesforce that actually have a parent account related to them. Axe has decided that for some reporting reasons, they're kind of putting all the branches underneath an umbrella so they can do some reporting and go for all of JP Morgan Chase across all the branches that we interact with. What do some of the numbers look like? There are no people associated with a parent account. Okay, and that the thing I would say that the rule of thumb to use for that is if people go to work somewhere, that place has an address. In this day and age, they may be working from home, but they're still getting business mail somewhere. That's who you want to relate that or affiliate that person to from an affiliation standpoint. Okay, so in this case, and I'm not picking on you, like outside this, I would go back and say, let me change that affiliation to whatever the JP Morgan branch is. If it's downtown, down on Water Street or something like that. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Another area where accuracy is important.
Yep.
Well, then there's an option when you choose that branch's affiliation, then you can go down, there's a parent in the bottom, and you can designate that.
Yeah, I'm gonna advocate for this around parent accounts. One organization here at Axe owns them. Maybe it's Kelly's organization, something kind of owns defining those, just so there's some consistency on kind of how they're created and how they're used. Because I think you guys are really the only ones who are technically using them, like you're using for reporting standpoint. For everyone else's purposes, an organization ought to have an address associated with it, and it ought to be, I'm going to say standalone. If it's going to get a parent assigned to it, someone else is going to take care of it. Okay.
This is like, again, I think it's #1, search. So there, we don't have we have a parent account for BMO or Chase, the big ones that have a lot of branches, that we've got branches in Illinois, that's sort of the Lloyd office, and we're tracking that on the side of the world. But if it's a smaller mortgage broker or something, search it, and if there's only one in there, go ahead and use that one. It wasn't necessarily technical. But if you're seeing branches with, like, we're trying to put in Milwaukee, Wauwatosa, like where that branch is to help identify, then assign it to a branch.
Okay.
Is that much? Most of those cultures, all we have is approval, right? And for like Rocky Morgan specifically, there's the loan officer name and the agent, like you have nothing else. You don't have the email sometimes. You definitely don't have the branch information. So unless you have the LE or the rest of it, and that might have it on there. There's nothing.
This is where the Google comes in.
Yeah, and then you Google and you just put Rocky Morgan as your name. There's no information. There's no public information to find. So all you have is your name, essentially, maybe the thinking of.
So for something like that, I totally agree with you, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Rocket Mortgage doesn't have a parent organization. And we don't have to worry about parent organizations on our team. All you need to do is put in Rocket Mortgage, Google search it, and all you come up with is that corporate headquarters, that's what you put in for that.
And that's already in there.
Right.
I mean, most of those will be in there. The only other like strange exception, and I think this is probably more realtor, is the Chase, like the national referrals that we get. We have one account that's like Chase. I don't know, if you search Chase, it'll come up. It's like Chase National Partner Referrals or something. So if it's one of our local branches that we're working with, we have those listed. But then there's one umbrella account, because we're getting referrals from people in
Yeah.
California,
Yeah.
DC, you know, all these places. So we're not gonna like market to them specifically for local opportunity stuff. But they do fall under their own title account.
I think a good example is associated thing. So I know that I've seen a lot be put under the associated parent account, which is located in Green Bay, but none of the loan officers that we would go with that, right?
Yeah.
Like Supan lives in Milwaukee, so like she shouldn't be associated essentially. Yeah, but like, but I'm saying like she shouldn't be, like we have so many associated with Green Bay, that's their corporate office. We didn't actually do that.
But I will tell you that a lot of times the pre-approval, the loan estimate, all the documents that we're receiving, they have that Green Bay address. That's why you have everybody tied to that Green Bay address, because that is the address we see.
Let's
Yeah,
talk about that, because the problem with this is what happens in reality then, is there's a pile of mail in Green Bay that no one's ever gonna get. And it's a waste of paper and postage, and we're not actually communicating with those people. So I think,
If there has to be an extra step somewhere where we're saying, hey, what specific branch are you at? So we can get the right quality of information.
there's
in
a
these fields.
reference, so on that contact record, their primary affiliation, when we put that in, we're audited right now, so it's at the correct branch. So if you're unsure, go back to that realtor or lender's contact record and see what the primary affiliation is and make that,
I got, you know, with all this stuff on up, and I was sending her stuff. No one knew who she was, even though that was her main office. So all the mail just sat in Berlin, kind of got in trouble for that, because I didn't know that she was a traveling lender, so she wasn't on cross for like 3 months. So yeah, that's the hard part with it too. It's, yeah, I sent all the stuff to Berlin, no one knew who she was. I did call 3 or 4 different people, and finally I emailed her, and she's like, I have an assistant, please send all that information to him. So how would we do that? And we can get.
I guess this is maybe my ignorance. Are both our coaches sending a lot of mail? to-
No, this is,
This is system entry. This is our basic system entry that we're doing.
I think Marquis was reviewing that entry that we put in, using it for marketing purposes, so when there's not something in there, then they can't follow up.
This is a little bit different. This is like invoices and stuff, trying to catch where invoices are and stuff.
so if she was an assistant, is there a mailing address that she has to run with that?
She did.
So that's where we would, then that's another person, that's a contact, that we have contact information for, that we're affiliating. And anything like complicated like that, just tell one of us and staff, how we can help figure it out.
So it is, Kelly, that we should find that out, because we had invoices piling up, and we do an AR. Right, so it's like forever to learn that,
Yeah.
well, the reason why these have not been paid is that they've been sitting there somewhere because they've been going to where we thought she was, and only in the AR follow-up do we find this out.
And that's gonna happen, that's what, that's life, right? For us,
Yeah.
people move, things change, so it's just a raise your hand and.
Well, it's shame on Associated Bank. They'll figure it out.
Well, they were like, yeah, they were telling me, oh, no, she doesn't work here. No one knew who she was. I'm like, what?
Right.
I don't know, yeah.
Follow-up we should do.
I'm sorry,
Follow.
I'm gonna talk about that in a little bit. I'm gonna talk about chatter here in a little bit, so, yeah. I'll set them out again here, thanks. Okay. let me figure out where we're at here. Okay, so we did this. All right.
All right, everybody, we've got 30 more minutes and it seems like everybody's getting a little antsy.
Yeah.
Should we do a 5-minute? So you can stop, go to the bathroom, or do you guys want to power through to the end?
Okay, I'll do my best to blitz
Focus,
this.
people, 30 more minutes.
Yep, I'll do my best to blitz this. All right, just last thing on affiliations here. Contacts have a primary affiliation associated with them. Okay, and I think some of you folks have used this. Okay, primary affiliation is two things: where they get their paycheck, or where they have the most influence for acts. Okay? What do you recognize as the most influential relationship or affiliations they have with all the organizations they work with? That is their primary affiliation. By preference, let's say where they get their paycheck. Okay, 99 out of 100 people, that would be the case. You have the one flyer who has some sort of, I volunteer, I'm an influencer, yada, yada, yada. Where do they get their paycheck? Okay, use that as your guide. Like I said before, if you enter a value, a lookup, if you enter an organization in primary affiliation, Salesforce will create the record for you, but you then have to go to the contact and update the affiliation record to reflect what their role is. Okay. Addresses. This is for Dean. Okay. When you enter an address in Salesforce, use the Google lookup. Okay. The reason for that is your 9902 reporting requires verified addresses, and Google does this automatically. Okay. Every place that you see a standard address on contact records, on organization records, if you edit them, you may have to give it a second, but the lookup for Google will appear, and as you start to populate it, it will start suggesting addresses for you. If you pick one, it'll put all the pieces of information in the right field, with one exception. Thank you, Thomas. There's an apartment field on your contact records. You have to put the apartment or suite or unit number, whatever it is, in that field. Otherwise, the address,
Lower.
yeah,
Whatever.
Oh, wow.
yeah. Otherwise, the address is not
Valid.
conforming to the 9902 requirement.
Oh,
Okay. This is an integration that's baked into standard Salesforce. This integration with Google Maps. Okay. So you can, on any contact record, on any organization record.
I'm gonna do a quick shout out for realtors. If you have Salesforce mobile on your phone and you're like going to meet somebody at their house, that address is mappable with Google Maps. So you can literally just pull up their contact record and click that link. It's also applicable for development people, because again, if you're going to meet somebody at their home, that becomes a link. And you can pull it up on your phone and use it to get direction. Super helpful.
Yeah.
Now, we are in a place where a lot of families are putting in their address as part of their orientation process. It is important that you actually correct that. And you use the Google search to have the full long address. Surefire way to know if it's not correct, if anything is abbreviated. If street is ST, if court is CT, they didn't use the search bar. The search bar spells out everything.
US.
Yes, it adds the country.
right.
Yeah.
That's a
So-
good indicator if the United States is in
Yes.
there.
So it's a good way to, if you're quickly looking at that address, to know that, oh, the Google search wasn't used. And typically for us getting that new contact into the system for the coaches, it's wrong. Because the family interest.
That's a good point. If you think about where a lot of your contacts are coming from now, with the start of the new virtual orientation process, we basically kind of, I'm gonna call it, outsourced a lot of the data entry to your customer. Right, so if you think about that process, they get 5 web pages that they enter a little bit of information to each time. There's only so much control I can put over that page around what they enter. And reality is, if you put too much constraint on that kind of stuff, people just back away from the process. So like what I always tell people is, if you are allowing people outside your organization to enter data, at some point you got to bird dog it, because they can put data that technically conforms to me, right? but could be complete gibberish too. You know, you can get, my email address is mickeymouse@disney.com. Well, yeah, I bet it is, you know? You gotta take a look at it. So those people, the nice thing about it is they all come in as what are called prospect contacts. Okay, so every single one of them, they come into the system, they kind of progress through these pages, and as they do that, their contact records getting updated. At any time along the way, we can keep track of that information, or just kind of wait until you turn them into a customer. And at that point, one of the things you want just to take a look at is, you know, just take a look at their address and make sure that it's been validated. Okay. Okay, we're almost through these. This is more specific to Kelly's team, but everyone ought to be aware of it, because what Kelly's team is doing in Salesforce is they're actually managing donation records, financial development, that kind of stuff in Salesforce. And the key thing here is both organizations and contacts can make donations. So if you think about it, a family can make a donation, the company can make a donation. Sometimes both things happen. Family makes a donation and the company matches it, that kind of stuff. But the key nugget in here is when you create a donation record, you don't put an organization on it. Salesforce assumes it's a household donation. So you just want to make sure that that's the case, that you're kind of doing it the way that you want to do it. Okay, and the last one. This one I had a tough time kind of describing. Like I have this mental model for me around what good data means. Okay, and I really think that kind of the way to describe it is this: is the farther along you are, the more you know. Okay, the expectation is the more you know, the more ought to be in Salesforce for everyone else to see. Right. My mental model of this is this: I'm a manufacturing guy. So when I think about manufacturing process, or the thing about like woodworking, if anybody does woodworking, that kind of stuff, when you start it out, you got a big block of wood, you got some pretty rough tools, and how close you are to your end product when you start, not that important, because you're going to work along the way, you're going to refine it, you're going to boil it down, your tolerances are going to tell you, you're going to know more about it. So when you're going off the end line with it, or you're done with the project, things are pretty tight. Okay. Same thing about you guys. When you first start working with a family, you start working with a realtor, you don't know a whole lot. You know, you have, I call it business card information. Okay. But as you start to work with them and develop a relationship with them and interact with them, you learn more along the way. You get more nuggets of information. You know what things you need to gather as a part of your process, part of your coaching process, part of your real estate opportunity process, part of your rehab project process. You know what the details are there. Expectation isn't that you know them all at the beginning. Expectation is as you work it towards closure, you're filling in the gaps. So when you get to the end, you got the complete picture, right? And you have the right pieces of information along the way. That's reasonable, okay? And I ask that you think about it like that. You know, it can be daunting when you look at a contact record and it's got this much, it's this big with these many fields on it. When we first start working with a person, you only know this much, that's okay. But as you start working with them, fill in the blanks. You know, at certain points along the way, you gotta have some stuff. You gotta know where they're paying for rent. You gotta know how much savings they've got. You gotta know what bank they're working with. Okay, you may not need to know that first time you meet them, but you need to know that at certain points in the process, otherwise the process can keep going forward. Okay? So I'd say kind of use that mindset to go. The more I work with families, the more I work with people, the more I interact with realtors, the more I interact with loan officers, the more I work with development foundations out there, I'm filling in the blanks. Okay? Google is your friend. I call it Google Kung Fu. Put some information in out there, go find some people, especially with foundations and that kind of stuff. You can find a wealth of information out there. Okay. Between Google, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff, the details are there. Okay. It just becomes a matter of when's the right time to know that kind of stuff. Okay. But your organization, you Axe Housing, have said this is important. This is important information for you guys to gather. Any questions about my commandments? Are they reasonable? Okay. They're guidelines, but they're pretty strong guidelines. If you do your best to adhere to them, your data will be good. Your organization will benefit from it.
And in a situation where the commandments don't apply, that's the situation that you get somebody else involved in. Yeah, for you, the commandments are hardcore. Like, talk to your manager when you see something that falls outside of this commandments.
Yep. Exceptions will happen. That's okay.
Yeah.
Speak up about it. Yeah.
So something that we didn't talk about
but it always makes me curious.
Sure, yeah, please do, yeah.
Like, with the files that we upload on Salesforce, sometimes when I check them, sometimes it does give me the view option, but sometimes it makes me download them. It has been very few times where it gives me an error.
Okay.
But I came to my own conclusion that the older the file, the more it makes me download it.
Mhm.
So I don't know
Absolutely right.
why,
That's
because,
a good question.
yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna guess and say it's something like this. It's probably not a Salesforce specific thing. It's more of a, does your browser recognize the file type? And does it know how to render and display it for you? I'm guessing that's kind of what it is, especially if you're finding it's like with older files versus new files. It might be that, you got some obsolete file types that people have uploaded. Yeah.
The
oh,
ones that you have to download are recycling records,
Mhm.
that you can't use. They're old.
you're over, probably a different, PDF.
Something like that, yeah.
So, but with more modern, with our newest transactions, then.
That shouldn't be a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, it's reviewing most of that stuff, but there's definitely some stuff that I run into the same issue. Gotta download it just to see it.
Yeah.
To find it.
Which honestly and truly, at that point, I would be looking for the Google Drive link anyway. And just go to pulling whatever I want to see directly from the Google Drive. Because I can.
Chatter. Has everybody seen Chatter in Salesforce? Chatter's cool. The way I describe Chatter, the Chatter really is in Salesforce, I kind of call it business social network. In Salesforce, this Chatter panel that you see on, I think it's on just about every record that you'll have contacts, organizations, it should be on just about everything. What it really allows you to do is have a conversation about the record right in Salesforce and not in your inbox in email. Okay, that's very significant for a couple of reasons. One, the whole discussion becomes a part of the record itself. So anybody who goes and look at it can see this whole thread of discussion that's gone back. So if you make decisions, if you want someone to go look at something, you can do it right in Salesforce. You can mention other users, which I do a lot. You can actually / reference other records. So you can do something like, hey, Lisa Nagle's record / mention Elisa and Torrey's record. Are they in the same household? And ask somebody right from there, not have to do it in the email. Right? The significance of not having to do it in an email is you all have independent inboxes. So which version of your conversation is the current version? Salesforce Chatter's the current version. Right? You as users can control how you get notified about Chatter individually. You can actually go into Salesforce and say, email me every time someone mentions a Chatter message, so I don't forget about it. So if I'm not looking at Salesforce directly, I get a notification for it. But anytime you're mentioned, if you ever notice there's a little bell in the upper right-hand corner, and sometimes it's got numbers next to it, it's telling you that there's things that you're interested in or someone has mentioned, that kind of stuff. Other thing that is super powerful about Chatter that is grossly underutilized is that records can talk too. So I can go in and tell a contact record to say, post to Chatter whenever my email address changes, and anyone who's following me will get notified about it. Post to Chatter anytime my organization changes, and anyone who's following me will get notified about it. Records can talk too. Very, very powerful. Somebody asked me about following. If you, by default, I think anything you create, you automatically follow. And the idea by following is you're saying, hey, if something changes on this record, I'm interested in the change if that thing has been flagged to kind of post to Chatter. You can manually go in and follow and unfollow records too. Keep in mind, there's a limit to the number of things you can follow. I think that the limit out of the box is 500 records across Salesforce. I think we can twist Salesforce's arm and bump it up to 2,000. I think that's the record, the twist. They may have jacked it up to 2,000 automatically already. I can't remember, but I know there's some of my customers have asked Salesforce to increase the limit on it. The key thing there is you can unfollow stuff. It will make sense over time. Like if you start to actively follow things, you're going to want to unfollow things. Like a real estate opportunity is closed. You don't need to follow it anymore. It's not going to change. Okay. A rehab project is done. You don't need to follow. Yeah, I think it's especially for you guys, you got people in different offices, you got, I'm guessing the real estate team, you're out on the road a lot. Has a lot of potential to be just a real game changer thing for you guys if you think about it.
So when will we use Chatter? So we use Slack as a chatting technology.
Yep.
Would we use Chatter if it was associated with someone external and we wanted then that record to be permanently associated with their contact?
I would use Chatter in your case if you have something, if you have a specific record in Salesforce directly, like I don't know if I got one up here, like this is my contact record in your Salesforce environment. If you and Kelly needed to talk about me and you wanted to retain that conversation so everybody could see it, who has access to my contact record, I would do it in Salesforce, because no matter where people are, they'll always be able to get to it. And always be able to see it.
So you could, I think all the departments have like your channel on Slack, so the development channel, Jesse will often drop in, hey, does anyone know this person, this is a new donation, you know, Mike Kelly, you know who this is, that might be an instance to just throw in the share on that record, because then whoever the next person that goes in to see if that knows, oh, nobody knows who this person is, or, you know, like say, oh, this is someone, a contact of a contact, connect them with that kind of thing.
Yeah,
You don't have a good example for the other, but like that's.
I think a good example for us is primary affiliations that we were just talking about, and you run across one and you're not sure what's going on. At DKIM, who is this person supposed to be affiliated with? You know what I'm saying? And me being able to respond right in Chatter. So if anybody comes across this unicorn again, they already see we had that conversation about how this person should be affiliated.
A couple things. While I'm a technology guy, believe it or not, I'm not a Slack. Only because for me personally, I just can't deal with so many inputs at the same time. I just can't deal with it. But that all said, I know you guys use Slack internally as a chat technology. Slack is actually owned by Salesforce. And at some point in time in the future, you may see a more deep, richer integration between Slack and Salesforce. They haven't announced any details around it, but based on what they've done with other acquisitions, I would not be surprised around that getting merged into Salesforce in some more deep and rich way than they currently have today. In my opinion, the issue that you have with conversations in email, you have the same issues in Slack, because it's independent of all the data. There are references to it, but still, in order to be able to get to that conversation, it's out on the channel somewhere, historically, X number of, I don't know how many screen pages away it is. If you have that discussion about the thing on Chatter itself in Salesforce, it's a part of the record. So anybody who goes there will see the conversation. And that's what the difference is. It's a judgment call in your guys' case.
But if Jesse's made delicious cookies and wants people to know they're in the conference room,
Slack.
you probably don't.
And email me.
It's related
Yeah.
to a contact, an organization, a donation, a real estate opportunity, a project, and other people need that information or could have use for that information, use Chatter.
So would Chatter be better than assigning a task? If I'm a relationship owner of an organization and, my direct reports follow me and I put in that note in Chatter, they can see it. Would that be better than that task?
I don't think so. And I'll say it this way, okay? Chatter is not actionable. Chatter is a discussion. Okay? If you need someone to do something, if you as an organization have agreed and decided that if you get assigned a task, it's part of your responsibility to get it done, then I would assign a task for it. If that's not the agreement among the entire organization around how tasks are going to be used, then I'd say you assign it however that will be.
I could see.
And I'm kind of looking at Dorothy when I say this.
Yeah, and I have kind of a really good example of this, because a lot of times with families, especially, things kind of go awry, right? Especially when you're in the purchase process.
Sure.
And so there's communication between the coach and the realtor And sometimes coach, realtor and family, so there's all this chatter that goes back and forth. And then it ends up with me, and I'm like, okay, well, who said what, when, what was done, what did you guys say, when did you talk? Did you talk to the coach? So I'm trying to piece together the conversation.
Chatter.
And I always tell them, like, if you guys like did your email and if the emails were here, then I can go through and get caught up on the history. But if that chatter happens here, then I have it. And then I'd be in a position to be able to weigh in, provide assistance, and help figure out the solution.
In a more speedy way, because she doesn't have to walk around and have
Gather
a full
information.
discussion with 4 people about what's going on with this household. And that's for me, what makes Salesforce so important. I tell my team constantly, I appreciate when I don't have to get up and come and ask you about this. If I can look through the information that is where it's supposed to be and understand what's going on with that household, I can address the issue without disturbing you and letting you go about your day. And even with something, like marketing, I would love to see in chatter if there's a specific organization or relationships that's really important to you, Katrina, because it's a donor relationship. This is an important donor relationship in these circumstances. Please include me.
Yes, yes, yes.
And also,
Okay.
make the assumption that our department, we're just super lawyers, it's not good. So we won't have to bug you when a press opportunity comes or whatever, we'll be able to go in and say, like, and we can get that story out of it and pull it that way, so just, it's kind of that idea of everything intersects and crosses over, and the things that you're like, we would never use that or read that are sometimes the story and the things that we use to get more attention for it.
So in that case, to be able to say, I just met with a family and they have a great story. Let me send a task to marketing so they know this is a great potential family.
We tag them in
story.
chatter and let them know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
hey,
just
you ought
tag
to,
them in chat.
take a look at this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
chatters, the difference there is, this is not some family that should know about it, chatter that contain somebody in marketing. Versus
Right.
if you said to the family, I'm gonna have our marketing person call you, put a task in that says, I told them you were gonna call.
Yeah.
The key to task, and I'm gonna look kind of at Jesse, the system assigns some tasks to you that I know you react to. Okay. The key to that is, if you're going to use tasks in an organization, everybody has to agree that when I get assigned a task, it has a due date on it, I'm gonna get it done by the due date, or I gotta let the person know that assigned it to me that I gotta make sure to do that. Okay, like some people can't do it, some people and others not do it. So if you're using tasks, you're using tasks, and that's and
Everybody should be using
and
tags.
kind of the agreement there is, if somebody assigns me a task, there's a need to get it done, and if I got a question about it, I'm gonna go ask them.
So, but in the example of the great story that, the home buyer coach is working with families, they're a great story. The home buyer coach isn't controlling when stories get written, what stories get written. So that would maybe then be more appropriate than asking for chatter as a, hey, marketing folks, this might be a good one for you. And then they can, if they believe, yes, this needs to happen, and it should happen in this timeline, then they'll potentially
Create
enter
their
in
own
a task that assigns it to someone to do that work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is great, because then as the home buyer coach, you thought this family had a great story, I can look in chatter and see. Okay, yep, I know I sent you that message, so you guys got it, and if you actually reached out to that family, it would be great to have some chatter there so that we know.
Or if you chat to Kelly in marketing and say, or Claire, and say, hey, this is a great family, they assign themselves a task.
Yeah.
Kelly or Claire's gonna call this person in 3 weeks. Claire reaches out, calls that person, logs the call. Now you can see that not only did that information get sent to marketing, but it was followed up on because there was a task created and completed. So if it's actionable, if you're reminding yourself it's a to-do item, or you're asking somebody else to do something, then usually a task is the way to go. If it's a, hey, this is something you should see, or this is really cool, or you might be interested in this, or I have a question about this, that's chat.
What would the track history be for chatter in the contact record?
There's a separate tab for it.
It's in the activity, it's just a second tab behind the activity.
Yeah.
So you're just hitting share and you'll be able to see.
Yeah, the whole,
conversation.
yep.
Because one thing that's weird that I'm noticing as well is like, when you send out emails externally through Salesforce, it doesn't pop up on the contact record. You have to do it through the service record to see actually a track history. Because you get a carbon copy to Excel, but like it disappears on the contact.
If you try this, like on the email, when you send out the email, make sure that the contact record is referenced as the two. Like double check that. I'll take a look at it outside of this too.
But that doesn't auto populate,
Yeah,
like that
Yeah.
contact,
It's not showing that you actually email somebody.
and it's
On the
right, right,
It only comes through on the service record. If you do it through the service
yeah,
right. Oh, yeah, it's gonna appear in the record.
yeah.
Which for me, I try to send tasks from the record that I want you to modify.
Where you will see me chatting to you guys is I'm going through and trying to do your contact stuff. Okay, because what I'll do is I'll go, hey, person who owns this contact, and I found another contact that looks just like this one. I can merge them. Are they the same people? Can you help me out here? The reality is this, is that I'm going through it, 80% of them I can figure out. Okay, but the other 20% of these these ones where I'm not quite sure, I need a little bit of tribal knowledge help with this. So by doing that, you can actually answer right on the record, and then I know what to do with it. Okay. But good discussion around chatter. I think it's a very powerful tool. I think it's underutilized. I think organizations like Series could really benefit from it. I'm gonna assume I'm okay talking about this stuff. If there's anything you guys want me to not talk about on this, this is just some things that we're working on kind of coming down the pike here. One is, you heard a little bit, someone mentioned SMX or texting from Salesforce. That is an active project that the team here is exploring options for. So the ability to actually communicate with your customers via text directly from Salesforce and not using your personal accounts is something that is probably going to be reality sometime later this year.
And it will log as activity
Yeah.
in Salesforce.
Yeah, it's a couple different solutions out there, and we've kind of been collectively kind of talking about which one might be the best one for Axe. You guys use DocuSign today, digital signatures for a whole bunch of forms, especially for grants and things. We are actively pursuing an integration so you will do that directly through Salesforce also. So imagine being on your contact record and you're going to apply for a grant, you push a button, it sends them all the forms with all their email addresses, that kind of stuff. And then manages that whole signature process as it goes around. So again, a couple different solutions we've been looking at, a lot of discussion around, what's the right way to do this, and among the Axe team, and we're all kind of working on that. The third one is something I've just started with Dee's help, is trying to figure out how we get eHome integrated with Salesforce. So all these people, I think, who are going through those classes and getting those results, how do you get that into Salesforce too? I use the term safe harbor on all this. If you ever go to a technology conference, they always say, we're going to show you this cool stuff. Safe harbor, make your buying decisions on what is available in the product now, yada, yada, yada. We're based on what we know, these things will likely happen sometime later this year. Things could change, and you never know, but that's, yep. Other stuff I've got on my radar, I didn't put it on the slide, but you guys are active MailChimp users today too. I know that Kelly's team is actively exploring a more deeply integrated solution with Salesforce that does that kind of stuff. So again, bring what you guys do back to the kind of the master source of information more tightly. And that's what I got. So at this point, I said I would leave time for questions. I left 1 minute. But I will stay as long as you guys have questions. I'm eager. Yes.
Thank you so much, Torrey. So I have, and Nikki, for all your work on this, I have comments, and then yes, people should stay and ask questions, which is, I think the other world that's on the board probably maybe use the capabilities. So I think on its face, like, this is operations excellence work that we're all doing right here. And that's obviously critically important. That said, most people on the team, there might be a few exceptions here and there. We love those exceptions. They didn't come to Axe because of operations excellence. They came to Axe because they wanted to figure out how they could have a huge impact on the community, right? And so the thing that I like about these capabilities is how they reinforce each other. So yes, this is operations excellence, but there's no way that we can serve the volume of families coming to us and make them feel like they're surrounded by a team, not individuals who are getting the handoffs, but like a real team that is looking out for their best interests and communicating with each other, unless we have this piece in place. We can't develop the relationships we need with funders, with partners, with others, unless we have this capability to know what's going on in various relationships without every single time you have a conversation and trying to interrupt the work that people are doing in order to get that info. And finally, to bring new people on, and listen, this is hard work. This is not most of our idea of a fun time, but if we're bringing on new people and we want them to feel like they actually can learn how to do things well and contribute, they need a system that actually meets our needs and that their colleagues are trained on and really honoring and working through. So that's all to say, we have ambitious goals, like 2,026 homeowners in Milwaukee by 2026. We need to help more than 100 families in Beloit become homeowners over the next 3 years. And there's other communities that want what we have. And so it's this really sort of painful, gritty work. It's following the commandments. And then when you can't follow the commandments, it's elevating those conversations so that we can continue to improve the system that's going to get us there. And so I just thank you, everyone, for sort of going along for the ride and investing the time into this that we're going to need to continue to invest. And great job, Torrey. You really,
Yeah, you
really
did,
did.
Torrey. Thank you.
I want to build on one thing that you said there, Michael, and that's that Salesforce is meant to be customized. And we've done a lot of work with the Axe team to shape it the way that your current business processes are operating. I expect those processes are going to change. Okay, business changes. Business, I have a term I use with a lot of companies. Business doesn't wait for Salesforce. Okay, things in your marketplace are going to change. You may be doing something and go, hey, I got an idea. Is there a better way to do it? Speak up. Okay, because we can change the system very, very quickly if it makes business sense to do it. Right? Sometimes I tell people, turn your back for 30 seconds and let me show you what kind of, like, you gave me an idea. Let me take it for a ride for 30 seconds, see if I can give you something to look at. Okay. The idea, the amount of time required typically for change in an environment like this is much, much shorter than old traditional system kind of development projects. If you ever got involved in, old systems, Java systems, all kind of junk, it took months and months and months to make the most money change in those systems. We can make changes pretty quickly if it makes business sense to do that for most things. Some things are a little more challenging, but one way or another, there's usually a way. Okay. But the expectation is it's okay if your world changes. We can take the system and adopt it to whatever has changed. Especially, like I said, you guys have grown quite a bit since I've been working with you. I would expect over the course of the next couple of years you're going to keep growing. You're doing awesome things in the community. More people are going to want your services. You have a bigger team. So this system is meant to scale.
And the bonus about Salesforce, about all of this is that it will grow with you. And part of the reason that we've done all of this hard work to bring all of these systems into one place is so that it can now grow with you out of this. Instead of multiple trees growing at once, you've got one tree, one solid root system, quality data, nice big sturdy trunk, and now all of the branches can grow from there effectively.
All right, I'm going to open it up. Any questions that you have? I'll do my
Really
best to
quick,
answer.
before we get to the question part of this, really like the apps embrace, love that. Let's remember to embrace all of our contacts and organizations and affiliations. And each other always. Remember, it's all about complete and accurate information. And most importantly, if it is not in Salesforce,
It does not exist.
My people. All right, if we can start any Q&A with my girls in Beloit who have not been able to be here physically, see if they have anything, and then we'll open it up. Okay?
You do have a second one.
Okay. Do they have any questions? Any questions from Beloit?
Both Dina and Fabi are on mute.
Okay.
No, thanks.
Nothing, Dina? No.
No, thank you.
Fabi, how about you?
No, I'm kind of an expert on this already, so no, no questions.
Okay. Any other questions? Either on stuff I presented or just Salesforce in general. Go ahead.
So when you're putting in an organization, as far as if you're putting in mailing address versus physical address, I've been choosing mailing address, is that correct?
I think for you guys, that is probably correct. Yes. 'Cause I think that's significant to you.
We didn't touch on relationships.
I did not touch on them on purpose. Well, just for the whole, I think it's not clear how it's being kind of used consistently across the organization. Not saying it won't come up in the future, but it's kind of changed over time.
This is really about everybody having that base knowledge we need to help each other to be a better team.
No, one comment I had like to help with that being said, I think sometimes when you're on a real estate opportunity, so what the approach you seem to doing is you basically been double entering the phone number. Because no one has a landline anymore, right? So they have cell phone. So put the cell phone there and then put the same cell phone number in your phone number. And that should show up in the real estate opportunity. So the reason why it may not be showing on real estate opportunity because it wasn't that entry.
Yeah, let me, outside this, let me take a look at the phone number stuff, because I know there is a little bit of a skew between Compass and the way they've modeled phone numbers and kind of, I'll call it Salesforce, the nonprofit success pack, and the way they've modeled Salesforce, because they've standard functionality in Salesforce on a contact is you have what's called a phone number, a business phone, and a mobile phone, and maybe another, I think, right? Or a home, I can't remember. There's one more.
It's home, mobile, work, and you
Yeah.
have to pick one of, and whichever one you pick becomes.
Well, like I'm backing away from that though, like even without that, just on a contact, like there's a couple of phone numbers, okay? And then nonprofit success pack introduces this thing of, hey, we're gonna give you a couple other fields, and whatever one you pick is the primary one, it does some automation to kind of copy it in there, does the same thing with email address. And then Compass did one other wonky thing where they said, well, those aren't good enough for us. We want our own kind, and we want to see them all at the same time, but they don't all sync up with each other. So outside of this, I'll resolve that.
And while most coaching phone numbers, it sounds like for families are gonna be cell phones. Like the numbers we're calling in development often, or, lender phone numbers, like a lot of those aren't actually cell phones. And so figuring out.
I don't like the double entry that we're doing. You guys know I don't like duplicate entry, period. But the bigger issue is, as we move forward and things continue to develop for us, like using mobilely, I don't want duplicate, I don't want non-mobile numbers. You know what I mean? Like, it's accuracy is what's important here. If it's asking us on our contact record as home buyer coaches to put in a cell phone number in a specific place, that's where we should put it, and that's the only place we should put it. Because we haven't fully used the system. We're working towards that. So I don't want to have to spend a bunch of time cleaning phone numbers when we have use of the text message app.
And if you're on the opportunity, contact is available to you. So all of this data is in one place. You may have to go to the contact if you need.
You might have to click a couple times.
Yeah.
It's not.
And we'll work on fixing that. I think there's a way to fix it, we'll get there. It'll get better, I promise.
For, in general, like one of my rules of thumb in general is a field has one definition and one definition only. Okay. So, and when we start talking about putting mobile numbers in other phone number fields, like this is why that kind of comes up to me is when we do stuff like that, we start creating tribal knowledge that, like, you gotta be, in the know. Like, you gotta know that if those two are the same, well, then the mobile, it's really the mobile number that doubled it. But if you're a new person coming into the organization, you don't know that. Right? So like what I usually tell people, kind of like what Dee said is, field has one definition only, and it's the same for everybody. A mobile number is a mobile number is a mobile number. If that's causing some other issues, like you can't see it, follow the issue. Because I may be able to go, hey, turn you back for 30 seconds and I'll swap the two phone numbers and I will pop up and the mobile number will show up there. Okay, that kind of stuff. But you had a question, right?
Yeah, for the multiple affiliation, so we have a good friend, Ilya. He is still a lender, but he started his own business. So how do you like put that together? And then he's also part of a whole bunch of other non-organizations. So sometimes he'll send me like lending referrals, sometimes he'll send me like credit repair people. So how do you like, besides putting it in notes or booking in notes, how do you? put
Sure.
that in?
I would,
I specifically
Yeah.
do this, so there's no business should be.
Okay.
So like he's only affiliated with one business right now because he's started his own business and that's what you would use for him.
Okay. So if he like emails me for other stuff, like referrals, do I just not use them as a?
He's one that we should talk to parents about, but the referral, so when someone comes in, even if the referral comes from someone like that, the person still has to go through the orientation typically, and that's where on their record, we have a referral referral person and a referral organization, and that would be where it goes on that.
And then I also have a realtor who works for me on Loan American Funding. So sometimes he'll send me realtor referrals.
It's the same person, like, I think this is what clicked for me was we think about things in business so much, like, how we put this all together for the business, but like, really Salesforce is about, I am a person and I am multifaceted and I work for X and I live in a house and I am related to other people in other organizations. So it's that same person, that's what would get connected with either a referral, real estate opportunity.
And I encourage you, like when you have these individual situations, this is where chatter is your best friend. At Kelly, at D, this person has this, and this. Where do I put that information?
It's also a good tell, like, if you see me as the last person that updated that record. Or Timmons or whatever.
Yeah, at Kelly, I'm confused. Some things look like they've changed in this record. What should I do with this information?
There's definitely human error, but like, we've been trying to audit and like get everyone really tight with where their applications are.
Yeah, and again, the bonus of having that in chatter means the next time you go into that record in 6 months, you're gonna go, well, wait a minute, I thought it, oh, look, it tells me right there that we already had this conversation. Now you don't have to store everything in your brain about every contact. It's right there in their records. That's huge. Because that's exhausting to carry all that knowledge in your head.
As I've been cleaning things up and doing these audits, noticing like some organizations have like 3 or 4 things named as the same thing, and so I'm trying to, when I create a parent for those, and then cleaning up and getting addresses for each individual location, I can create a parent without having like an address.
Yeah, technically, the minimum you need to create an organization is a company name, organization name.
That's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Because the goal is there's not a person.
Right.
That parent is like a.
Yeah.
Right.
magnet for all those branches,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
So if you ever pull like parents and want to send it to all the branches.
Technically, I would say you're creating a phantom account, and I would stomp my heels and go, don't do that, but you have a business reason for it. Right? And reality is for all those organizations, there's probably an address associated with it. So there's
Sure.
brick and mortar somewhere.
Sure.
It's just not important to you guys.
Okay.
So.
Is any information important on there, like a website or?
It's up to you.
That can be helpful, because it just allows you to point to data. So if you
We
put
can talk about
associated
that.
things, yeah, that's kind of a
Okay.
technical decision to
Sure.
make within your order. And define.
Any other questions?
Sort of referring, not referring.
Yeah,
So is there, could we possibly do another one about portal? It's not really helping us much.
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm gonna say yes, probably. I'm not sure I'm the best person to do it just because.
I'm not really on board with it because it's Compass.
The portal functionality associated with your Salesforce environment is actually a Compass feature, and it's completely controlled by them. We have very, very little ability to influence how that works. And I know that over the course, I'm gonna say the next couple of years, they will likely change it quite a bit because they're using some really old Salesforce technology to do it, because that's what they had. But unfortunately, there's not a whole lot, I can shed any light on.
So much for the credit report section, that really helped.
Oh,
Yeah. That really, really did help.
sure, I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
The serious system doesn't even receive the. In my opinion.
The Cirrus, the inbox stuff?
The
Yeah,
schedule.
Yeah, the scheduling with Cirrus is not integrated with Compass. Like, it's integrated with your Google, like your Google Calendar,
Yeah, the calendar.
but it doesn't integrate with Compass. I'm not sure what Compass's plans are for calendar integration. I know they had a tool in the past with some of their other products, but it doesn't look like they're advocating it in the future. The Cirrus tool it's a very powerful integration with Google Calendar. We use Google for our email and our calendar stuff. And Cirrus, I mean, it rocks. You can do all kinds of things with it, but there may be some kind of quirky stuff that take an extra step to do, kind of go bookings and notes and that kind of jazz. Other questions? Thank you very much for.
Good question, good conversation.
Thank you. Whoops.
It's so nice to meet you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye, take care.